Are we live? I think we're live. Oh, man. What a week it's been, everybody. Holy cow. Oh, baby. All righty. We are here. It is time for Missouri Tigers Live. We were, of course, live Friday when Kirby Moore took the job. So if you want my thoughts, in the heat of the moment, this is the Voice of College Football. My name is Zach Ramilius here, as I always am, every Monday for the Voice of College Football, Missouri Tigers Live. We were here Monday. We talked about, we were here Friday. We talked about Kirby Moore taking the job at Washington State and kind of what that means for Mizzou. And to me, what it means is you have a shot now to, if you're Eli Drinkwitz and you haven't beaten a good team in 2 years, like you just haven't. You've had good seasons, but you haven't beaten a team in 2 years. I think what this does for you is give you a chance to evolve. You don't have to change everything. Obviously, that'd be a little silly if you changed everything. But I do think you have time now to become a better version of what you are. And what is going to make you a better version is the offensive coordinator. And figuring out a passing attack that doesn't repulse me. We'll talk about Josh Manning here in just a moment, but I think the main thing on everybody's mind still is the offensive coordinator search. Saturday morning, another list of names was produced by Power Mizzou. Of course, when I came on, I talked about Chip Kelly. I talked about Andy Kotelnicki. We talked about Brewer, the guy from Duke, as a very possible hire. Some other names now that I think are starting to get some attraction in the Mizzou spaces. Again, I talked about potentially taking Jacob Peeler and giving him the full-time job, and I'm very much against that. It's not that I don't think Jacob Peeler is a good coach. I just think if you're Mizzou and you've put all these investments into the program after Eli's extension, and you have said essentially, we are going to try to be an upper echelon consistent SEC team, you can't then just hire from within at OC, especially with they upped the amount of money they're going to give assistants. You just can't. So we'll see what happens, but I don't think they just give Peeler the job or Luke. We'll see if those guys take jobs other places. I haven't heard anything that says maybe they would, but it's always a possibility in this era of college football. So some other names that I've seen floated out there is Jake Spavital. He's been around. He played at Missouri State. He has no ties to Eli. What Jake Spavital would bring he would bring the passing attack. Now, when he was at Baylor, he did run more of an air raid, throw it around scheme. And Baylor did spend a lot of money after the 2024 season. I'm a little shocked why they're keeping Dave Aranda. They did spend a lot of money to keep him around, to keep Spavital and Sawyer Robinson around and then they had a really bad year. But I think Jake Spavital would be a very inspired hire. I think that would be Missouri taking one of the best guys in the business. That would be swimming in some deep waters to pull him from Baylor, but certainly possible. We'll see what happens, especially since Aranda's probably got a year left at Baylor and they're losing Sawyer Robertson. Another name is Joe Craddock. I'm just looking at my notes. He was the offensive coordinator at Tulane. He's not going to follow Summerall to Florida. He obviously hired Buster Faulkner, which was a hell of a hire for the Gators. He's been at Clemson. He's been at SMU. He's been at Arkansas. Tulane football the last several years has been very balanced, whether it's been with Jake Retzlaff, Darian Mensah. They've run the ball very effectively since he's been there. It's something to see why Summerall. Now, I think the reason Summerall didn't take him with him is because Buster Faulkner's an awesome football coach. He just is. There's a lot of people I know that talk about this stuff that are like, was it Buster or was it Brent Key down in Atlanta? So we'll find out soon enough, seeing how Key does without Faulkner next year. I saw somebody throw out Derek Nix. How much control did he have over the Auburn offense? It looked better in the second half of the season. He's obviously not going to be retained by Harsin because Nix does not run the spit on the sidelines offense. Andy Kotelnicki is the name I keep bringing up. He was at Leipold at Wisconsin Whitewater. He followed to Buffalo to Kansas. Had a hell of a year at Kansas, a hell of a tenure at Kansas with Jalen Daniels. Everything went wrong at Penn State. He didn't have the quarterback that really runs his system. How much of this was Kotelnicki's fault, we'll probably never know. But he's had a lot of success in the Midwest. He knows the area. He knows the area. He coached at Kansas. I think he is a hell of a coach, but we'll see. We'll see what happens moving forward with him. But he's a name I would definitely keep an eye on. That would be a home run hire to me for Mizzou. I brought him up too. Chip Kelly. Chip Kelly also I talked Friday night. Chip Kelly was interviewing at Georgia Tech. I do think and I've heard he also interviewed not like I have sources. Hired. He interviewed at Michigan State for Pat Fitzgerald. So I think he's an option. I think college Chip Kelly and NFL Chip Kelly are different beasts. I also don't think I don't think Andy Reid could coach this Oakland Raiders offense with the O-line they have. So who else? I think Power Mizzou floated Junior Adams, the Cowboys wide receivers coach. I'm not a huge fan of that. I don't like bringing NFL guys down. We tried that with Steve Wilkes, and it didn't work. And then there's the name I think would be the best hire, and it's controversial. I understand that. But I really do think Bobby Petrino would be a outstanding hire. Bobby Petrino coaches ball, man. He just coaches ball. He knows how to draw plays in the dirt, and I think Bobby Petrino would do an amazing job for Missouri. I also don't think Bobby Petrino, if it's not Arkansas, has any real hope of getting into a full-time coaching position. The offense would greatly improve, obviously, if you would put him on staff. It does not matter what you think of Bobby Petrino as a person. I understand that he's very scummy, but as pure as an offensive play caller and designer, there's nobody better. Maybe in college football. The Arkansas offense was dynamic again. That team was dynamic again. So we'll see what happens with this offensive coordinator search. Another name, obviously, is Casey Woods. I don't want to neglect bringing him up. Coached with Eli at SMU. As far as I know, there was no animosity there. He left to be the OC in Dallas. Ollie, I'm doing a show, buddy. To be the OC in Dallas with Rhett Lashley. Don't think he calls plays, but I think Lashley does call plays for the Mustangs. So you would be getting a guy that's basically a first-time play caller. I think it would be an interesting hire, but I would prefer Mizzou obviously go home run shopping before, you got Corey Batoon, and Corey Batoon has done a really nice job. I just don't think you need to go conservative here with your with your OC. I also think there's enough guys that don't have jobs. Kotelnicki doesn't have a job. Craddock currently doesn't have a job. I don't think Will Hall is going to keep him at Tulane. That you can hire a guy and hire him quickly. I don't think this needs to be like the DC search of 2024, where it took months or not months, but weeks before we got anything. I mean, and they settled on Corey Batum, who's done a good job. So that's kind of what's been going on in the OC search. I haven't heard like any name. It's been a weekend. Like you haven't heard really any names like, oh, Mizzou's interviewed this guy. Mizzou's interviewed this guy. Obviously, the night Mizzou makes a hire, barring, it's the holiday season. So I do have things, everyone's got family stuff going on. But barring that, I'll be on that night when Mizzou does make a hire. As you are listening to Missouri Tigers Live, I'm Zach Remilius. I'm here like I am every Monday night to talk about the Missouri Tigers. Kind of a slow week. But the portal's not quite open yet. Some guys have entered. We'll talk about that here in a second. The bowl game's coming up. We'll talk more about the bowl game next week. I don't think there's a reason to really go into it right now. And we did a lot on the OC search on Friday. So, but Missouri is in a spot to hire an OC. And like I said Friday, I don't think this is Eli needs to transform the program or change what he does. That's just not necessary. He's done an unbelievable job at Missouri. But I think this is a chance to evolve the program, to take that next step, to go from good to great. And what did I say after the Alabama game? This is a good program. It's not a great program. And part of the reason it's not a great program is you have not been able to consistently throw the football down the field. You did it 1 year in 6, and that was 2023. And that not just against the bad teams. I don't care that they hit a deep shot against Central Arkansas. I care that you hit deep shots against Bama. I care that you hit deep shots against not Arkansas. Good Lord, everybody hits deep shots against them, except Mizzou this year, but they didn't even try. I care that you hit deep shots against like next year's schedule of Texas and Oklahoma. Texas A&M. If you do not have that ability, you're not going to win big. You're just not. I talk about this every freaking week, and I will continue to talk about it. This is college football. If you are expecting to be a good offense, scoring, 28 plus a game on good teams, not just, hey, we average 28 a game, we're a great offense. No, you scored 70 on Central Arkansas on UMass. Like, who cares? And you didn't even score. That UMass game was actually really ugly. In hindsight, that should have been a really big alarm. And I think I was on that pretty early too. I was like, oh, that was not pretty. Anyway, you have to be able to make explosives happen. You can't rely on 22-year-olds and younger to consistently go 12 to 15 plays down the field or explosive runs, which you can't scheme up explosive runs. You can scheme up effective runs, but you don't ever book into a run play going, oh, this one could go for 50, where you can with pass plays, with the way you use leverage. If you get a certain look, you can leverage that into a big play. That's why you see a lot of teams in the country get explosives through the passing game, is they exploit the leverage, they exploit the hashes, and make big plays. Mizzou has not been able to do that now in 2 years. So we will see what happens with the OC search moving forward. Obviously, if it's still not up by next week, we'll do another 15 minutes on the OC search. I just also haven't heard any rumors, so there's really nothing to talk about more than like, look, I think your top tier of options are like Petrino, Kotelnicki, Chip Kelly. If once you get past that, if you get into like the Brewers, the Jonathan Brewer from Duke, and you get into that like category of guys, Casey Woods, I think, comes to mind. He's been around, obviously, Rhett Lashley, who's a brilliant offensive mind down there in Dallas. That's where I think then you start to tip into that level of guy, which is certainly not an issue. Or Jake Spavital. I think Jake Spavital would be a good hire too. Obviously, I think that would go a little bit more into that he's going to change things, because Spavital is more of like a heavy throw the ball offense. Now that may just be the last 2 years they had Sawyer Robertson. I didn't watch a ton of Daquan Finn Baylor before Sawyer Robertson took over, so I can't speak to that. Joe Craddock would be more of the same, not in terms of effectiveness or anything like that, but he is more of like a balanced attack. He wants to run the ball a little bit more. He loves physical zone football. I think that would be a really good hire. I would not complain about that hire. And then, of course, the only one I would complain about is if you bring down an NFL guy. I don't think you need to do that. We saw Eli try it with Steve Wilks. It went poorly, I think would be the word. And I think that's about it, man. Like, I think that covers most of our bases on the OC search as you listen to Missouri Tigers Live. The big transfer portal news today, as we get into talking about the transfer portal, we're going to talk about the portal, talk about maybe some of the QBs that have entered, and we'll do my playoff predictions, and we'll get out of here. This is not going to be a super long show. I do have a family thing I got to get to. I have family in town for an unfortunate situation, so but this is not going to be a super long show tonight. Last week I went for like an hour, which hey man, good for me. But I think tonight we'll close it up, pretty early comparatively to like last week. But the big news in the portal today for the Missouri Tigers: Josh Manning enters I didn't mean to hit that one. I hit OC search again. Josh Manning enters the portal early in the year. Last year, Josh Manning kind of emerged as a guy that a lot of people were excited about. He got some time over Mookie Cooper. He was big. He was physical. He just never quite had big breakout games when it came to receiving. You look at like 2024, his game logs. He had two touch catches for 68 yards against UMass. Other than that, like he never caught more than that. He never caught more than one ball. He had a 36-yard catch against Mississippi State in big time games or bigger games, not just. And then this year, got off to a nice start. 4 catches, 53 yards against Central Arkansas, and then was held really in check. Had 1 catch against Bama, 3 catches against South Carolina, but he did have a touchdown. And then you got into Auburn. He was 5 for 63. I thought he played a really good football game. And then 4 for 55 against Oklahoma. But those were kind of the big games for him. And I grew to really appreciate Josh Manning, though. Yes, he never became – I couldn't tell you how great of a route runner he is or how good of a – his separation skills are. But what I can tell you about Josh Manning is the dude blocked. He blocked, and he was great at running those non-offensive no offensive PI rub routes. I grew to really, really like Josh Manning as a football player. I'm sad to see him go. I do think if you're Mizzou now, I said last week I don't want Mizzou to go out after a quarterback. I do think now you have to go after a quarterback. I think you don't have a choice. Or not a quarterback, excuse me, wide receiver. I was just thinking about the quarterbacks we're going to talk about here in a second. You do have to go after a wide receiver, and you might have to go after a couple. And before I said I don't think you need more unless you can get a stud like this year's version of KC Concepcion out of Texas A&M. I don't think you really need one. I do think now you need to bring in guys that not only could be potentially really awesome players, but to fill roles. You bring back Alubade, you bring back Terry, you bring back all the freshmen potentially. We're still waiting to see what happens in the portal. But you lost James Madison, who was never going to play, unfortunately. And you lost now Josh Manning, and you're probably going to lose Marquise Johnson. So who made a cryptic post on Instagram. I think he's good as gone. He was obviously very upset with how his role came down at the end of the year. But hey, like best of luck to Josh Manning, man. There's going to be another fan base that's going to come to find a real love for him like I have, because the dude works his tail off. He blocks. He has good hands. Again, I couldn't tell you if he's an amazing separator, if he does what he does amazingly from a wide receiver standpoint, but I know he blocks, he rubs rod routes, he does the little dirty things that a lot of wide receivers don't seem to want to do, and he can make a big physical catch every once in a while. So we'll see next year wherever he goes. If the hindrance and lack of numbers this year, he only put up about 350 and 2 touchdowns, were due to him, or if it was due to the fact that the Missouri passing game never really took off the way I think a lot of people wanted it to. Next part, going into the transfer portal. So I do think you add wide receivers to list of needs, and you probably need 2. I'm going to assume one of the freshmen go into the portal. I couldn't tell you which one, but I bet one of them do, unfortunately. And they're all very talented, and I know they're really high on all of them. So, and Alubade obviously showed the hell out this year and showed that he's going to be a really talented piece moving forward. But going into the rest of the portal, look, there's been a lot of guys that entered. I don't think it's really interesting at this point to talk about a lot of it. The only thing I think worthy of talking about is quarterback. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks and say they're going to intend to enter the portal. Most notably today was DJ Lagway. I don't know if Mizzou's going to take a quarterback in the portal. I don't, but it's going to be, you're kind of in a precarious spot where Matt Rosales is obviously very talented and you need to probably play him. I'd play him unless you get a chance at like one of the guys I'm about to mention below. And you have him sit for another year. But you can't have Bo be your quarterback next year. I hope it's Matty Z, but DJ Lagway entered the portal today. He's a guy, obviously, if you bring him in, he's the starter day one. Super talented kid. Maybe the most talented quarterback in college football from a talent perspective. But he's had injuries. Florida was never able to put it together. Billy Napier, lack of ability to call plays, really hindered that offense. But he's big, he's strong, he's fast, and he has a lot of ability. I don't think he really would be an option for Mizzou. I don't think he would, and I don't mean to insult Mizzou by this, but I think he's aiming higher in terms of program stature than Mizzou as we speak on December 15th. Of course, we're not going to know until after New Year's where he's heading, but I just don't think really he's really an option for Mizzou. Another guy that entered the portal look, all the memes are funny, but Dylan Raiola is a good quarterback. Missouri or Columbia is not that far from Kansas City, and you could play into that a little bit. I know there's the jokes about Texas Tech. I know Oregon is really interested. I think Brandon Marcello from CBS tweeted that out. None of that would surprise me, but I do think if you're Mizzou, you make a phone call here. You make a phone call, you talk to him, see if you can't get something worked out because he's a really talented football player. And I think you would win a lot of football games with Dylan Raiola as your quarterback instead of Bo this year. The last guy, and this is a guy I do think Missouri can target, and I think this guy is an option. I know I was talking to somebody earlier today. He said he has ties to Knoxville. Now, Tennessee's got a couple of really talented kids they're really high on, so I don't know if he's an option there. I also don't know if they're going to bring back Aguilar if he gets that waiver. But I would really look at Brendan Sorsby. Now, there are a couple things with Brendan Sorsby. For one, he's a little erratic with the football. He did only complete, I have his numbers up here. He did only complete 61% of his passes, and that's after completing 64% of his passes. And he was terrible in that Nebraska game. He had a couple games where he was terrible. Like, let's be clear. Against Nebraska, he's 13 for 25 and a pick, and the pick was atrocious. He was pretty mediocre against Arizona, 15 to 28, a touchdown and 2 picks, but that was his only 2-pick-inner game. But then there are other games where he was excellent. At Oklahoma State, not a good team. I understand that, but he threw for 304 touchdowns. At Utah, 11 for 33 for 221 and a pick. So there's obvious talent there, though. He does not put the ball in harm's way. He has only thrown He threw 15 touchdowns his sophomore year at Indiana. He threw 18 touchdowns his first year at Cincinnati, and he threw 27 touchdowns last year at Cincinnati, according to only 5 picks. I mean, the year at Indiana, he spent the last year of Tom Allen before Cignetti took over, 15 touchdowns, 5 picks. He's also a very, very capable runner. 100 carries last year for Cincinnati for 580 yards and 9 touchdowns, 105 for 447 the year before that. He's a QB that can scramble. He can move, and he needs that. It has to be part of his offense. What was confusing about Mizzou this year, and if you can keep Zollers and bring in a Brendan Sorsby, I think you can use some of that more than you were with Bo. I mean, with Bo, really, except for the South Carolina game, and then all the way to Arkansas. Now, of course, it's because he got hurt. They did not use his legs. You can use his if you bring in Sorsby and keep Zollers around, you can use Sorsby's legs more because you do have that proven backup that can play. Because Sam Horn went down, your backup was a true freshman, and that throws everything into a loop. But I think with Sorsby, part of his game is running the football. And you can do that very effectively, especially when defenses are going to be so focused on Ahmad Hardy with whatever your offensive line is going to look like next year. So Brendan Sorsby is a guy I would, my meaningless, like I would check him off. Like I would be very okay if the Missouri starting quarterback in 2026 was Brendan Sorsby. I think he's a gamer. I think he's a really tough football player. He had a couple pretty rough games against Utah. You would hope maybe with some elevated coaching, we'll see who Mizzou brings in at OC, and better talent around him would elevate that a little bit. But he's a guy that you're going to have to win a battle for. There's going to be a lot of teams that want that kid, and he's for good reason. I think he's a really good football player. So yeah, I would give my complete seal of approval to Brendan Sorsby, and I hope he's the guy. I kind of do hope he's the guy. If you're going to bring in somebody from the portal, and it's not going to be Raiola, it's not going to be like a DJ Lagway. I kind of hope it is a Brendan Sorsby. Now we'll see who else enters. We still have about 2.5 weeks before the portal closes. I'm sure Pete Thamel has already got drafts of tweets of guys that are going to announce they're entering. So we'll see what happens. And if Zollers enters, then you're going to have a lot of issues. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of it with the portal. Like you see guys that are entering, offensive linemen, tackles, things like that. That just doesn't interest me right now. Like, wait till the portal opens and we can start talking about those kind of guys. But quarterbacks, always interesting to talk about. So you are listening to Missouri Tigers Live. My name's Zach Armilius. We just did 30 minutes about the portal, 15 minutes about the OC search. So I think now, because I do have a family thing I want to get to, but I want to have this on video, we'll go ahead and get to my first round playoff predictions. My first, we'll start with James Madison versus Oregon. Look, God bless James Madison. It's been a really funny Twitter exchange between them and the Ducks. I just don't think in Eugene they really have the talent to match up with Oregon. And I think Oregon, if they can get healthy, and this is kind of a perfect game to get guys healthy in against a G5 opponent like James Madison, I think Oregon's going to win by like 20. I don't think this is going to be a very pretty game. I think it'll be a great atmosphere in Eugene. And look, I'm not, everyone's like crapping on James Madison, but that's a good football program who now under 2 different head coaches have won a lot of football games and put themselves in really good position. So, shout out to James Madison for that. I see a couple people just hopped in. We did just spend about 25, 30 minutes talking about the portal and the offensive coordinator search. If you want more on my offensive coordinator search opinions, I do have a 20-minute video I put up on Friday talking about some of the options, whether it's Bobby Petrino, Andy Kotelnicki, Chip Kelly, and then some guy, Jonathan Brewer from Duke, Casey Woods at SMU, Joe Craddock at Tulane are names that I think would all be really interesting for Eli to look at as to be the next offensive coordinator at Mizzou since Kirby Moore took the job at Washington State. The next game is Tulane Ole Miss. I'm going to fully say this, man. Pete Golding, if you lose that game, you should not be allowed back in the state of Mississippi. And if you're an Ole Miss player and you're not absolutely jacked to play in that game, crazy. That place is going to be hilarious. It's going to be hostile. It's going to be nuts, and it's going to be fun. That's going to be the best atmosphere in the first round. No one's really thought about Ole Miss as like, oh, this is Ole Miss, Oxford. No one wins in Oxford. But I do think that's going to be an outstanding atmosphere. Miami, Texas A&M. I think Miami's a bad matchup for Texas A&M. Miami has the best D-line. We saw the Texas D-line get after Miami a little bit. We saw the Missouri D-line get after Miami. We saw the Texas and Missouri defensive lines get after Texas A&M a little bit, and I think Miami has legitimately a claim to have the best D-line in the country, not at Texas Tech. Those Ruben Bain off the edge, they just kill you. And Texas A&M's offensive line has struggled at times against – Mizzou defense basically did what they wanted for 2.5 quarters, and then they got a short field, went up 2 scores, and game was over. I do think Miami wins that football game. I think that's probably your most fun football game to watch of the first weekend, because then you have Alabama, Oklahoma. That's going to be ugly. It's going to be ugly, disgusting football on Friday night, and I'm obviously going to watch it, but man, is that game going to get above what's the over-under in that one? 43.5? I would bet the under. I would severely bet the under for that game. But we'll see kind of what happens there. And then we'll get to the second round. So that would put I'll pick Alabama in that game for the record. I just don't think the first time those two teams played, Oklahoma got a couple really goofy breaks that I don't see happening a second time. Now, playing in Norman will mitigate some of that. I just don't see a pick six, a fumble punt again from Alabama. So I'll pick Alabama in a really close, ugly football game. Then we'll flip right over. That puts Alabama against Indiana, which is a really interesting spot because Indiana's really good, but now you're playing a team with elite talent that hasn't played like they have elite talent. I'll pick Indiana to win that football game, but I would be very nervous if I was an Indiana fan. I would rather play Oklahoma because I know Oklahoma's offense can't score. And now that Indiana is missing their best pass rusher, we'll see what happens. And then you go down, you'll have Oregon versus Texas Tech. Oregon, sneaky, good path here. You can get your team healthy against James Madison. You play Texas Tech, a team you really should respect, but you're not afraid of. You're more talented than them. And then you get Indiana or Alabama or Oklahoma. Look, if you get Indiana, that's a team you should expect is going to have a hard time beating you twice. And you're not that scared of Oklahoma or Alabama in 2025. Then you have Ole Miss, Georgia. I'm going to pick Georgia. I do think this is where the loss of Lane is going to hurt. And I think Georgia just is in a different mindset right now to lose that kind of game. And then you'll have Ohio State, Miami. I'm going to pick Ohio State for obvious reasons because Ohio State is really good at the game of football. And then you get into the quarters. I'm going to pick Oregon to beat Miami or to beat Indiana. I think it is hard to beat a team as talented as Oregon twice. I think Indiana's a hell of a football. The Indiana Hoosiers are going to be playing and they're going to have 3 Big Ten teams, by the way. The Indiana Hoosiers are going to be playing in the Final Four of college football with the Heisman winner. That's crazy to me. That's still you say it out loud and you're like, wow, Indiana. But they're a good football team and they play hard. But I just think Oregon has the talent, a better talent level, and they're going to get healthy. And I just don't think Indiana can beat them twice. It's hard to beat really talented teams twice. And it wasn't like a situation where BYU and Texas Tech, where BYU just couldn't block Texas Tech and BYU lost both those games. So we'll see what happens there. But I have Oregon going to the national championship. And then you have Ohio State, Georgia. I have Georgia losing that game to Ohio State. So I have Ohio State, Oregon playing for the national championship, where I will pick the Ohio State Buckeyes to win the national championship. That's my pick. The Ohio State Buckeyes go back-to-back to win another national title, which is unfortunate for all of us that follow the sport. But that's my, we went through the portal. We went through kind of what we expect in the OC search. I think I'm going to wrap it up tonight. So, guys, like and subscribe. If you come by, you want to hang out on Monday nights, talk Missouri Tigers football, please come on by. You can follow me on Twitter at PsychoZ_50. I'm going to get out of here. I've got some family stuff to attend to. So thank you all for tuning in. Again, if we get news about Mizzou hiring an OC, we will obviously go live the moment we hear it. So thank you all for tuning in. Have a wonderful evening. And MIZ, enjoy your weekend of the college football playoff.